Will this be part of the video that's taped? Good.
I'm Ed Bashaw, and I'm the Dean of the School of Business here at Emporia State University. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the Live with John Rich, an interview with a legend. I'm so looking forward to that. You know, Emporia State University is known as the adaptive university, and the events of the last 4 months have certainly put that into focus for us. And we've had to be adaptive with this event. We first scheduled a face-to-face celebration of Dr. Rich's career with us, 50 years in mid-April. Became pretty clear that wasn't going to happen. So we met shortly before that event came, and we determined that surely to heck, July 24th would be a good date for us to be able to get together. Well, obviously that's not happened as well. But what we did do is we decided that we want to have this event for many of you who will be tuning in and wanting to honor Dr. Rich and wanting to listen to see what he had to say. But rest assured, we're eventually going to have a face-to-face event because many of you have said, I want to shake his hand. I want to hug his neck. I want to tell him I love him. I want to tell him how much he's meant to me. And so that will happen. Just stay tuned for that announcement as we're more certain we can have that. Want to have two communication clarifications for you. This will be an interview setting. And after the interview, we'll be sending Beth Ginter some questions from our audience. And so if you'd like to submit a question, please go to emporia.edu/live. And Tyler Curtis will be collecting them and passing a few on to Beth at the end of the program. Also, I've had questions from folks that have asked, geez, I'd like to send John a card in lieu of anything. I'm listening to him, but I want him to know that how much he's meant to me. So if you would like to send Dr. Rich a card, it'll come to Kramer Hall and we'll collect all of those. And the address is Emporia State University. Attention, Dr. John Rich at 1 Kellogg Circle, the campus box 4039, Emporia, Kansas 6681. And that will be a great spot to send to them. And if you want to get those to John, that would be great. I'm sure he would enjoy getting those. I'm like you looking forward to this, so I'm going to shut up and I'm going to turn it over to Beth Ginter for her part with John. Enjoy.
Thank you, Dr. Bashaw, for your welcome. When Dr. Bashaw asked me to interview you, Dr. Rich, I didn't realize it was going to be in this format, live on YouTube with people watching. I'm not sure what I was expecting, but it was always my plan to interview you and write down your story because I feel it's important. So I'm grateful for this opportunity. And as the day got closer, I realized what an honor it is to be the one here with you today. I first met you when I worked in the foundation, but since I moved over to the School of Business 4 years ago, I've gotten to know you better. It doesn't seem like a long time, but we've had some really good conversations and I've enjoyed becoming your friend. And I'm looking forward to this conversation. So are you ready, Dr. Rich?
Well, I hope so. I think I am. So.
Okay. We'll just get started. You came to Emporia State in 1968 when you were 22 years old with a master's degree from Oklahoma State University. So can you tell us how that all unfolded?
Sure, I'd be happy to. It's a little bit of a story, or at least I think it's appropriate to tell a little bit of a story. I graduated because of the way my birthday fell. I graduated from high school when I was 17, got my bachelor's when I was 21, my master's when I was 22. And one of the aspects of the story is my mother was always really proud of me at 22 being a college professor. She thought that was really a big deal. And every time I hear the song, the Eagles song, "The New Kid in Town," and "Everybody Loves You" and all of that, I always think about that. How I came to Emporia State really is a story of relationships. And I think that's one of the things that I will talk about a lot today, are relationships. But When I was at Oklahoma State, my dad was ill, and in between my junior and senior year, he passed away, and I needed a job. So I went to Wilton Anderson, who was head of the accounting program, and he gave me a reference over to the internal audit department. And I went, and so my senior year and my master's year, I worked in internal audit. Had a good time there. A lot of really good people. Learned a lot. As it so happens, one of the people I worked for there, his name was Robert Clark or Bob Clark, and he was over the audit of the grants. And OSU, being an A&M school, had lots of grants, and I worked a lot for him. And he had been a faculty member at Emporia State before he went to OSU to work on his EDD. And Dr. Russell had called him and asked him if he would come back and teach accounting at Emporia or at KSTC at that time. And he said, no, he really didn't, but he thought he might know someone who would, and that someone was me. Mm-hmm. So I applied, and I didn't have a car and at that time. And so Bob brought me up to Emporia. I'd never heard of Emporia, Kansas before. I never heard of KSTC. I never knew who they were. But it was something that was really fascinating to me, or the opportunity was really exciting to me. And so I took it, and I guess the rest of the story goes from there. As a point of conclusion to the story, and also emphasizing the significance of our relationships with others, eventually Bob Clark became Director of Financial Aid at OSU and did a number of other things. In the 80s, in the 1980s, the latter part of the 1980s, we had a instructor position open to teach accounting. And we hired him to teach accounting for us, and he taught principles of accounting for us for a year. And unfortunately, he died about a couple of weeks before the year ended. So it's kind of a story about the significance of, you never know when relationships are going to be valuable and how they're going to turn out. And so I think taking care of our relationships is exceptionally important.
I would agree to that for sure. You've worn a lot of hats in the School of Business, a lot of different hats for different amounts of time. But one thing I want to talk to you about was your faculty athletic representative hat that you had for 23 years. We know you love sports. If it has student athletes there, then you're there. You can see Dr. Rich there. So tell us about your experience with the faculty athletic representative.
Well, it was truly a great experience. I had a wonderful time. It became something that I could invest my other time in, and somewhat of a passion, or it was really an avocation within my profession, or within my vocation. And the job is, the position is really the liaison between athletics and academics. And so it fit both of my interests well. And part of the role as FAR is you chair the athletic board of, used to be called the Athletic Board of Control, now it's called the Athletic Advisory Board. But that's the policy recommending group to the president. And at one time, we were quite involved with the budget and with student fees, and we, Kent and Bill Quayle can remember well, a lot of late nights working with ASG over trying to get student fee for athletics increased, and those were memorable experiences. But when I became FAR in 1990, Emporia State was transitioning from the NAIA to the NCAA Division, to NCAA Division II. And so for those first 2 years, we had to certify eligibility at both the NAIA under one set of rules, and then the NCAA Division II under another set of rules. So it was possible for a student to be eligible for one and not the other. And so that was a reasonably complicated process. Carl Profit, or Dr. Profit, had been the FAR before me, and he had outstanding reputation for integrity and accuracy. And I was a little bit intimidated, but as time went I really fell into the role and really liked the role. And the major role of the FAR relates to athletic eligibility, that they're academically eligible to compete, and also relates to the student athlete experience, that athletics does not prohibit them or get in the way of them being successful as a student. So those are the two main prongs of what the FAR does. And as such as the FAR, you are one of the representatives of your school, whatever that school would be, to our conference, the MIAA, and to the NCAA. So for 23 years, I attended 23 NCAA conventions. I attended multiple MIAA meetings and got to know the people from our schools, the schools in our conference well. And that was really refreshing because while, we don't really like Central Missouri, the people from Central Missouri are really pretty nice. And we don't like the people from Washburn particularly, but they're really pretty nice people. We all want the same thing. We all want the best experience for the student athlete and to protect the integrity of the institution that it is providing a viable program. How I got the role was a little bit surprising to me. The role came open, and Dean Hashmi nominated me for the role, which I was surprised that he would be willing for me to take on a role that with significant time commitment out of the school. And so he nominated me to President Glennon, and I did not get the position. That's pretty classic for me to apply for things and not get them. So the person took the job, and after about 3 months, decided it was way too much than they wanted to do. So they finished out the year, and then I took the job the next year, and I had the opportunity to work with both Bill Quayle and Ken Weiser. They were great people to work with, very lovely to me, even though sometimes I'm sure I created problems for them. Felix Grimmett, Mark Comstock, and Carmen Leeds I worked with eligibility and student athlete experience. And of course, Carmen became a great friend and colleague. I worked with Linda O'Mara and Sheila Markowitz out of the registrar's office, who played a key role in athletic eligibility. Two marvelous ladies, wonderful people, very competent people, and made my life much easier. And being a member of the MIAA group, being a representative to the MIAA for a long time, ultimately somebody has to serve roles and have offices. And I wound up being chair of both the eligibility committee and the infractions committee, and ultimately became president of the MIAA from 1999 until 2000. That would not be possible anymore. At that time, the presidents were not voting members of the conference. They sent their representatives. Now, and since that time, about 15 years ago, the presidents became active members, and and a president is the president of the conference. But there were a couple of ADs and FARs after me that were presidents, so that is one of the changes. And at the NCAA, once again, if you're around a long time, you get to do things, or you may or may not want to do. But I got appointed to the Division II Academics Requirement Committee. That's a 4-year appointment. And during that time, we increased or elevated every academic requirement for students in Division II. All the transfer requirements for the transfer kids, all the incoming freshman kids. That was about the time when the NCAA clearinghouse was coming in and was new, and there were all kinds of issues floating around. And so that was an interesting experience. And as part of that, being part of that committee, I was chair the last year I served. But as part of that committee, the degree completion committee, which is for student athletes that had finished eligibility but had not graduated, that committee was created, and I was the first chair of that committee, and also served on the postgraduate scholarship committee. Another good experience, this is maybe going on too long, but another good experience was Carmen arranged for Cameron Babb, Megan Grissel, and I to go to a leadership conference put on by the NCAA, and you were to develop ideas for doing things on your campus. And coming out of that leadership conference was the SAC Senior Prom, which has become a tradition on our campus and one I'm very proud of.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you, Dr. Rich, for your service to that. That's quite the commitment for sure for 23 years. So when you got your undergraduate and master's degrees, did you know all along that you wanted to be a professor, or did you have another career in mind?
Well, another question that probably deserves a little bit of a story, and I think it also pertains to me and ESU to some extent. I graduated from Hollister High School in Hollister, Oklahoma. There were 9 in my senior class, and there were 200 people in the town I lived in, like a lot of small towns in Kansas, lots of them. And I didn't really know what was possible. I didn't know what my alternatives were. I was first generation college, and my dad had graduated from Hollister High School in 1923 in the first class. I graduated in the last class in 1963 when they closed the school. So when I went to OSU, you know, my role models were very narrow, and my high school basketball coaches, I had 3 and 4 years, but they were my role models. They were the people I identified with and that I connected to. So I was going to be a high school business teacher and coach basketball. And I took my first education class, and I decided I wasn't going to do that. I did not want to spend 4 years doing that. So I changed my major. And I had taken a bookkeeping class in high school, and I'd heard about that accounting was a good career. As a matter of fact, ironically and surprisingly, this was in the 1960s. There was a woman out of that town of 200 that had gone on to become a CPA. And she was sort of the superstar of the town. And she was, you know, one had gone off and had really made it. So I thought, well, maybe that would be something I could do. And I took the first 2 accounting classes, had Wilton Anderson, who's a legendary person at Oklahoma State in accounting. I had 100 people in each of my classes, and I loved it. I just loved it. He was a marvelous teacher, inspired me. And so I went on to get my degree in accounting, and then got my master's degree in accounting. And I interviewed with some big A firms. I interviewed with one in Houston and one in Dallas and one in Oklahoma City, and had a job offer from Arthur Young in Oklahoma City. But I believed I could do the work. I thought I could do what needed to be done. But I was intimidated by the social aspect of it. I didn't know that I would fit in. I felt awkward, and I'm a non-drinker. I'm from a small town. I didn't know how to make small talk, and these were all, you know, very successful people that the country club said, of which I'd never been in a country club at that point in time in my life. And so I was very intimidated by that, and I think many of our students have encountered a similar experience. And I've been able to relate to that experience well because it's experience I had. So when this issue with KSTC then, and Bob Clark and the job at Emporia State came along, and I came up and interviewed, I felt much more comfortable trying to doing the teaching job, which is back to what I really wanted to do. It's just in a different venue. And it's also, you know, the reason that I didn't go into public accounting. I've always wished I would have, because I wish I had the experience, but I've never been sorry I didn't. So.
Well, we're glad you didn't too. So, John, what was your plan when you came to Emporia in 1968?
Well, if you think about 1968, Vietnam War was huge. It was huge. It was a big, big thing. Enrollment at colleges was at record high. I think Emporia State's record enrollment was somewhere there in the early 70s. And of course, a lot of young men were in college to stay out of the draft, to avoid the draft. And they were interesting times, a lot of social unrest, somewhat like today. And I thought, well, my draft board did not give deferments for teachers. And so I thought if I came to Emporia State that might give me a deferment. But I also wanted to try teaching at a college for 2 or 3 years. And then I thought I would go off and get my PhD and our doctorate, and go off and teach at some big time school. And of course that never happened. I did get drafted for 1 year here, but then came back.
So let's think about the 50 years you've been in the classroom. Many people ask, how did you do it? And how did you stay in a classroom for 50 years? Did you ever think to yourself that you didn't want to be in the classroom anymore?
It's a pretty easy question. The answer is no. Matter of fact, I still want to be in the classroom. I just know that it's time for me to get out. But I mean, there are days when you don't want to go, you have to do something, or you have some unpleasantness happens or something, or you have something you don't feel just right. And there are some days when you don't want to go, but never long periods of time. And matter of fact, often that's the best part of the day is in the classroom. And so I still would enjoy being there, but I know it's time for me to get out. I'm slow. I've slowed down. My brain doesn't work as well. I make mistakes. I have a somewhat joking understanding with my more recent students, that they need to tell me when I make a mistake. I used to say, well, if I'm just trying to see if you're paying attention, but we got long past that pretty quickly. And then ultimately the technology has also made it more unpleasant. And for me, it's added anxiety. Is the technology going to work? You want to do this thing in class, and this doesn't come up, and that doesn't work, and this doesn't happen, and you feel like a fool. And so, it's probably past time for me to go. But I'm glad I have a 1 hour class to teach in the fall, and I would be happy to teach again, but I know I shouldn't. I know it's time to move on.
So I just wanted to remind our viewers that if they want to submit questions for Dr. Rich, we will try to get to a few when we're done here. They can go to the emporia.edu/live site to do that. John, some of us know that you have a closet with orange clothes, and then you have another closet with black and gold clothes. Did you ever want to work for your alma mater, or were there other opportunities that came your way?
Well, initially, yes. I mean, I think when you leave a place that you really liked and you really loved, you think you want to go back there. However, the reality of it was, early on, I didn't have a PhD, and there was no way to go there without a PhD. So that really was not an option. And so there was really no reason to fantasize about that, because until I got my PhD, that wasn't going to happen. And I was, took me a long time, way too long to get my PhD. I didn't get it until 1985, which was about 16 years after I left there initially. And so going to OSU really was not viable up until that point. I did interview for a position at a school similar to ESU in Oklahoma. My mother was still living there at the time, and was getting older, and I thought it might be good to be closer to her. But the job did not pay any more than the one here. You had to teach more classes. You had to teach at night. And it was also a metropolitan school. It was not a campus setting, and I love being in a campus setting. Mm-hmm. And so I I didn't take that job. Also, along the way in the 1970s and 80s, um, I was really, things were really good here. Were we making a lot of money? No, but things were really good. I refer to that as the golden era of accounting at ESU. Tabor, Preston, Bob Tabor, Bill Preston, Laura McEntee, and me, and then eventually Larry Falsetto. We had a good time together. We worked together. We had lots of students. Accounting club was in its heyday. We had great Christmas parties at the Tabors. We had accounting club banquets that had 120 or so people and had great speakers, and they were really good times. Excuse me. Also, along that time in the late 80s, in the mid 80s, Dean Hashmi had shown up. The School of Business was formed in 83. Dean Hashmi became the dean, and George Walters was the associate dean. And of course, they're two people that I really think a great deal of and really enjoyed working with them. And, from 83 to 2003, Dean Hashmi or Sajjad was on a mission to get the school accredited. And I really enjoyed working with him and being involved in that process. And I really never thought about leaving at that point of time because I felt I was involved in doing something important, and I really had great respect for him and George and other people in the school. And so, and at this point, it was getting later on in the career to leave.
Mm-hmm. So along those lines, then, was there a certain particular point in your career that you decided that you were going to stay at ESU for your career and that you were just going to become an ESU lifer? Was there a certain pivot point that you decided that you're here for good?
Yes, there was. The second time I applied for the dean's position and didn't get it, I came face to face with a decision. Am I going to stay here or am I going to leave? It's ultimately a somewhat painful experience. And first time was one thing, second time was another thing. And I'm not saying the wrong decision was made, but for me personally, that was very unpleasant, painful, and hurtful. And a lot of people would look at it like they would not have very much self-respect if they didn't leave and go somewhere else and pursue that position somewhere else. And I thought a lot about it. And as another Eagle song, you might say, I discovered that Emporia had become my Hotel California, that I could check out, but I could probably really never leave. It's where I wanted to be. And I had an alum send me a note a few days ago and said a variety of things in the note. But one of the things he said struck me that it's a little slightly different way than I've ever thought about it before. One of the statements he says, "You became one of us."
You are one of us, Dr. Rich. You're a Hornet through and through.
ESU had already become home, and I wasn't going to leave to spite someone else or to be angry at someone else or angry at the situation, because I was not going to let them hurt me the second time. The first time having turned out, it's painful, and then but I wasn't going to be hurt again from the response to that.
Okay. Let's move on to something else here. So let's think about your years of teaching and professing. What aspect of being a professor or the accounting field do you think has changed the most? But what has also remained the same?
Well, the obvious one, the obvious one, of course, is technology. When I came to ESU, the technology was an overhead projector with an acetate roll and that was it. And we had rooms full of typewriters and calculating machines, rotary calculators, all kinds of stuff. And of course, it's changed tremendously.
Yeah.
And we didn't even have handheld calculators at that point. And when they came out shortly thereafter, and they were selling for hundreds of dollars, it was a big deal. And getting it to the point where you could use them on the CPA exam, that was a big deal because initially you couldn't. Of course, now we have people that um, work from home, and they do everything from home. One of our alums who's an audit manager lives in Dallas but works for an office in California. Everything is electronic. There's no paper files. All files are everything is electronic, and so that is really changed and really made a difference. Another thing that has changed is the complexity of financial information. I thought they were complex when I was doing pensions and leases and at Oklahoma State as a junior. I thought they were pretty complex, but the the financial world has gotten increasingly complex, and things like derivatives and bitcoins and hedge funds and all of those things, they're much more complicated. So in that regard, they're the 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 basic core of accounting is the same, but the issues you have to apply it to have have certainly changed. And another one of the changes is the gradual move toward using uh, current value or value rather than cost. And cost is very objective, value is very subjective, and there's more push to use more subjective information. And I think that is a difference. I would say the thing that hasn't changed, and I think this will surprise some people, the thing that hasn't changed are the students. Yes, they've changed. They look different. They talk different. They dress different. Uh, they do different things. But in the bottom line, the students that show up here are all good people. And they, not all, but mostly good people. They have good values, and they're people, a lot of them first generation. They're trying to find themselves. They're trying to find their place. They're trying to make their mark in the world and get out there and do things. They have some insecurities. They have some anxiety. They have some lack of confidence. They often don't know what they don't know. Um, but they are good people trying to do good things and ultimately do. They expect us, I think they deserve and expect us to respect them as an individual and to appreciate them as a person. And some of our kids, it's amazing. If you have 30 kids in a class or 20 kids in a class, the background they come from. When you've got kids with parents in prison, and you've got kids that are foster kids, and you have someone who's pregnant and not married, and everybody has a story, and there are all kinds of things going on in their life. And I think it's helpful to get to know them personally and to get them to know them as an individual. And I also think it's important that they know we want them to be successful. And that even though we're maybe working them hard and we may be giving them a bad grade, that's our objective, is to help them get to where they want to be. And I think if you can convey that to students, they tend to be a little more understanding and a little more to buy into that.
Okay. So, Dr. Rich, as you think back on the many accomplishments of your lifetime, and I know there's been many, which one of your accomplishments are you the most proud of?
Can I only say one? Am I limited to only one?
I'll give you a couple. How about that?
Well, I've got five. I want to mention. So, okay. To me, obviously, the greatest honor that I've had is the distinguished professorship. I mean, having the people you spent your life with value what you've done is very rewarding, and and that's, those are the people that you cared about, and they care about you, and they've done, and they want to support you or support your name or what you've done. So that's extraordinarily meaningful to me. And the second one I would mention is, and I'll be quick. Second one is in 1974, I got the Sci-Fi Outstanding Faculty Award. I don't even know if Sci-Fi exists on campus anymore or not. But since that was a student award and awarded totally by students, that was very, very important to me. AACSB has to be something we're all very proud of. Last couple, I was really an honor to be selected or to included or inducted into the Athletics Hall of Honor. To me, that validated the time and effort, and that it was important to me to know that they appreciated it and valued it, and that it was significant to them. And then the last one that I wanted to mention is the Davis gift, the Carolyn and Dale Davis gift in my honor to the university.
All great accomplishments, and we thank you for spending your time here and giving us all those. Tell me about some of the most memorable experiences that you've had during your time here.
Okay, well, there have been many, and having the question in advance and thinking about it, I decided to maybe use some things that are a little bit different. And I'll try to be quick here. I do think the time with the accounting club, when the accounting club was at its peak, those were great times, great times. And they, the events, the attendance, we'd have 60 people at a picnic, and we'd have 2 softball teams, and people, there was just good rapport, and there was a lot of harmony. And there was also, even though there was a little bit of friction between a couple of the faculty members, everybody got along basically pretty well. So that was memorable to me. One of the other kinds of stories is a story about, the other two are classroom stories. I was teaching a class in summer school, and class was early in the morning, and it was hot. And given the great HVAC in Kramer Hall, the windows were open. And I had a girl in class, a young lady in class, and nice, good girl, kind of came from background of hard knocks. And she worked all night at a 24-hour filling station grocery store. And then she came to class. And when she came to class, she often was a little sleepy. And so she would nod off, and she would nod off. Well, on this one day, it was hot, and she had worn a halter top to class. And she began to nod off, and there was a guy sitting not next to her, but the next seat. And the windows being open, a wasp came into the room. And the wasp was flying around, and he would land on her, want to land on her back, and he would shoo the wasp off, and he would shoo the wasp off. This went on for a little bit, and so the wasp came back, and so he reached over and swatted at the wasp, and when he swatted at the wasp, it untied her halter top, and it fell open. And he started screaming, "The wasp, the wasp, the wasp!" And she was all stood up, and it was, needless to say, that was the end of class that day.
I bet it was.
In the class. The other one is the other story I would tell, and I want to tell that for a particular reason. I was giving an exam, once again, it was final exam, and the exam was at night. We were in Kramer Hall, and it was hot. And a young lady was taking the test. She had on a sweater, a high neck sweater, and it was hot in there. And if you remember the old wooden chairs in 318 in Bob Tabor's room, and it had rollers on the chairs, and she fainted, and she fell out of the chair and fell on the floor. And so I went to her and looked at her, and I'd worn a long coat because it was cold, and I covered her with my coat, and it just so happened that Tim Wright was in the class. And of course, there were no there were no cell phones. That was long before cell phones. So I gave Tim the keys to the office, and he went running down to the office and called called 911. And well, here comes the campus police. Here comes the ambulance. They cart this gal out on a stretcher. And all these kids were over there taking their test all this time while all this stuff is going on. And Tim just insisted they should all get extra credit. Well, of course, Tim was being funny. Tim certainly didn't need any extra credit, but that was clearly a memorable experience. And I wanted to mention Tim because, as you know, we lost Tim in the last year, and we always miss him when there's a gathering of accounting people. Tim had in mind a retirement gift for me, and of course he's not with us any longer. But a couple of weeks ago, his wife Christy showed up with a black and gold Afghan that she had made because that is what Tim wanted her to do. Well, you may know that Christy can do anything. She's a very talented person, but the two of them were very supportive. They are the ones who have underwritten the professional development class ever since it started, and they've been great friends. We missed him.
I miss his voice in church. Yes. So, Dr. Rich, I have about 4 more questions. This one pertains to your future plans, and I understand that you plan on being in the classroom this fall. So what are your plans after that?
Well, I wanted to be in the classroom in the fall because I never felt like I had closure with my intermediate class in the spring. And most of those kids are in this professional development class, and I want to bring closure with them. Mm-hmm. I've accepted a volunteer position in the Kansas Business Hall of Fame. That will take a small amount of time. I don't think it'll take a lot of time, but I look forward to doing that. I hope to attend a lot of ESU events, alumni events, sporting events when we can have them again, football, basketball games at a couple of different schools. And do some traveling, but as I said earlier, it's become obvious I become one of us, or I become Emporia State is home, and I'm not likely to get too far away for too long, as long as I can manage my life by myself.
Good, very good. So Dr. Mary Teal, I know her announcement has been in the media here recently. She was just announced the new chair of the Accounting, Information Systems, and Finance Department here in the School of Business. And she comes to us from the University of Central Oklahoma and is very proud to be named the first Dr. John C. Rich Distinguished Accounting Professorate. The professorship was established in 2017 and funded mostly by your former students whose lives and careers that you formed under your wing. And Dr. Teal recorded a video for you and your audience, so let's hear from her now.
Hello. I'm a hornet because of you, Dr. Rich. It's beyond an honor, and it's absolutely beyond my imagination. So I used my imagination for just a moment, and I said, well, let me step in your shoes. And when I did that, I'm going, my goodness, for 50 years. And the word that came to me is stand, the word stand. So I said, in looking at what you did, you raised physically and took a stand morning after morning before countless students. And you had the weight of the impression, and the wealth of knowledge that will impact society for decades to come. And that was one stand. But then I said, well, stand also means what you represent. So a representation. So Dr. Rich, you represent a love, a great love for the profession. And it's promotion, it's growth and development. And we all see your love and passion for teaching these principles. And I said that the stand really doesn't even stop there. There's one other aspect of the stand, and it is what stands. That means what remains. And I want to say that you are the epitome of the class that you teach, professional development. You're a pure professional that has developed people, the profession, and this planet. And even in your name, Rich, I looked up that definition and I'm going, okay, here we have it. You are rich in generosity, rich in strength, rich in your depth of knowledge, your abundant reach, your ample memories, and your beautiful, warm heart. I want to say that I see, even in my small time, that you have arisen to stand. You have represented what you stand for, and the difference that you've made will always and forevermore stand. Thank you so much, Dr. Rich, for being who you are.
Okay, Dr. Rich, having heard the words from Dr. Teal, how are you feeling?
Well, I feel very, very honored. I want to thank you, Dr. Teal, for those kind words and appreciate your good thoughts. I want to be part of wishing you a warm ESU welcome. We're very pleased to have you here and have you part of our program. The people I know at UCO tell me that you have an outstanding reputation as a classroom teacher and leader. And I encourage our alumni and supporters to stand with you as you take leadership of this accounting program and bring new energy and leadership to it, and as we advance our program into the future. I know that you will, and I look forward to great success for you and hope you find Emporia State as great a place as I have.
Dr. Rich, the Spring 2020 Spotlight that was just out honored you and talked about your rich legacy. And I wanted to talk about some of the things some of the alumni spoke about you and how you left your mark on their lives. Tatum Graves describes you, and I wanted to talk about some of the words they used to describe you. Tatum Graves says that you're caring, kind, intelligent, respectful, and humble. Terry Young describes you this way: a role model, genuinely concerned, and having a significant impact on so many ESU students. But I think that Tony Forkham sums it up the best by saying this about you: father figure, patience, guidance, professionalism, friendship, and unlimited willingness to mentor a student pretty lost in the woods. So when you think about all these descriptive words about you, what do they mean to you, and which one do you feel best describes you?
I'll be hard pressed to say which one I think best describes me. To me, what is important there about all of those words is that they're all personal. To me, my experience with an individual student is personal. And I like to get to know them. I like to get to know why they do what they do, what their goals and ambitions are. I like to be able to encourage them when they don't do well to do better, and when they do well to congratulate them. And so it comes back it comes back to the value I place on relationships and how important it is to have positive relationships, because they can be impacted or can come about in many different ways. And, you know, for me, coming back to the other side, I was very much like an Emporia State student. I mean, it's very much my experience. And, and so I think I've had the experience that helps me to understand. Of course, many of our kids come from, certainly not all of them, but many of them come from. And for me, it was important for it to be personal. Uh, I don't mean personal in an inappropriate way, but personal in a professional way. And I think I needed a place to belong. I think I needed a place to belong. I don't have kids of my own. I don't have, you know, and so it's given me a place that I feel like I belong, and I can celebrate the successes and feel the pain of when things don't go as well. And so in that regard, I think it's the personal aspect of it that I really enjoy, knowing the individual student and what makes them work and what makes them tick and why they are the way they are. And so, you know, as I said, you, and speaking as a student, as a former student said to me, you know, you have become one of us. And I think that's what has helped me to be able to have the relationship with students that I have. And so I think I found my place. It's about time, I think. And I'm very proud to be a Hornet.
Well, we're almost done here. We want to talk about one more thing, and then we'll ask a couple of questions from the audience. But first, I want to talk a little bit about Silent Joe. And I think it's fitting that we talk about it because it's history, and I'm talking to a legend. So everybody just needs to bear with me for just a minute or two. The bell was cast in 1855 in Troy, New York, and it hung in the Kansas State Normal School from 1880 until that building was torn down and replaced by Plum Hall in 1917. The bell was kept in storage until 1939, when the bell tower, known as Old Joe, was built following completion of the football stadium. The idea was for the bell to sound the victories of the school, and many believed that the 1939 football team was so talented that it would wear the bell out from all its ringing. But after the team lost the first 2 games of the season, it was then dubbed Silent Joe, and that's the name we call it now. The bell was silent in 1943 as the men left to go to war, but it rang again in 1945 on May 8th when peace had come to Europe. So during the Now and Forever campaign, improvements were made to Silent Joe, and in 2015, the hardware that held the bell in place in the tower was replaced so it could ring for generations to come. But also in 2015, an anonymous donor came forth and provided funding for a carillon system that we call Saandhyarag Now and Forever Chimes. The system allows the chimes to ring on the hour, and it also sounds the alma mater at 10:52 in the morning and also the fight song at 1:52 in the afternoon. So it creates an emotional connection between the sound and people being on campus. And it also plays hundreds of other songs. And in fact, today at 3:30, you and I sat outside the Sasidhar building and we listened to What a Wonderful World. And you served as co-chair of that Now and Forever campaign, and you had a major role in developing the gifts that provided funding for the carillon. How important was that to you?
Well, it was very important, very important. When I first came to Emporia State back in the late 60s, early 70s, I was stunned and really saddened by the lack of pride and by the lack of tradition here. And I came out of a very different environment. At Oklahoma State, there were lots of tradition, lots of pride. But I would hear people say, well, it's pretty good for Emporia State, or it's only KSTC. And I thought, well, what in the heck does that mean? Why is it okay if it's not the best, or if it's not very good, why is it okay just because it's ESU or KSTC? So one of the things that I would like to see is, and I think it has improved, but I still think there's a long way to go, that I would like to see our alums have more pride in the school and feel better and great about graduating from ESU. And I would also like to see some traditions, more traditions. And not to bore you with my OSU experience, but at OSU, they play the alma mater at 8 o'clock in the morning, at noon, and at 5 o'clock. Everybody knows the alma mater. You don't have to have a piece of paper in your hand at graduation to sing the alma mater. Everybody knows the alma mater. It's short and it's emotional. And if you're at a ball game and before the game, or if you win the game, you put your arms around the people next to you, whether you know them or not, and whether they're male or female, or yellow, black, white, or brown, and old or young, and you sing the alma mater. And to me, it establishes the celebration of and the transition across generations of our pride and our loyalty to the school. Now, I don't know that we're going to get anything like that at ESU. I cannot create tradition at ESU. Traditions have to be built by those that are there and those that are. But I would really like to see us all be very proud of our alma of ESU, and and also develop traditions that bind us together in times like these, times that are hard times and unfortunate times, when we're all one big family and we all value and appreciate the experience of being a Hornet. And so that's the reason this project was especially important to me.
Well, I'm glad you spearheaded that, and I think it's a great addition to our campus, and I love listening to it, and I think of you when I hear it, and I think students that have come to campus for 4 years and hear that when they come back for homecomings and events, that they're going to hear it again, and it's going to be something that they're going to say, yeah, I remember that and I miss that. So thank you.
Well, I hope it's something that as time goes on, we can develop more tradition or more of those kinds of things. But I recall President Saandhyarag. That was a big issue with him as well, and it's not good to me. It's not good when one of your traditions is about being unsuccessful, being silent Joe. I mean, that just does not resonate very well with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that was the last of our questions, but we do have a good question from the audience. And so I'm going to ask you that question. So I'm just going to go to my chat room here. Okay, Dr. Rich, speaking of students, you've made a huge impact on so many students, and several of these students are quite competitive. With that in mind, were the years when John Hughes, John Kramer, and Mike Chatham were hanging out with you in Kramer Hall the most fun you've ever had during your 50 years at ESU?
Well,
I don't know if you sent that question in.
I have an idea where that might come from, but I was thinking of this the other day, and I thought of a story that I might have told. But it's hard to say it's most, but it was certainly one of the most. I like ornery kids, and those three ornery kids, they're ornery. They like to have fun. As I recall, one day I came back from lunch and they had converted my office into a key on a basketball court. And they taped the floor with the free throw line, and they had put people in, and they had a referee an infamous referee that none of us liked out there. And I left it that way for 2 or 3 days. But they were lots of fun. Those were good times. And all three of those guys have done well. And I'm really fortunate that my path crossed theirs.
I'm sure you've had a lot of fun memories, and our hour is up. I'm sad to say. So we're out of time, but I have enjoyed our visit, and I know I'm not alone when I say thank you for your commitment and your loyalty to Emporia State. And thank you for changing lives and making differences in all of the lives that you've touched. And Hornet Nation loves you. And we wish you an incredible, well-deserved retirement. Thank you, Dr. Rich.
Thank you so much, Beth. Appreciate it.